Admiral Kate Monroe stood at the wide window of Space Command headquarters, her eyes fixed on the night sky. The stars looked different tonight. One of them was moving. "Madam Admiral, we have confirmation. The object has changed course again." "It's definitely not a comet," said Lieutenant Greg Powell, his voice tight with tension. Kate nodded slowly. After 20 years in the United States Space Force, she had prepared for this moment her entire career. First contact, the day humanity would finally learn they were not alone in the universe. "Time to arrival?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. 6 hours at current speed, but it's slowing down. The object, or rather objects, will enter Earth orbit within 12 hours. Kate turned away from the window. The command center hummed with activity as dozens of officers monitored screens and communicated with tracking stations around the world. President Alan Garrett was already on his way from Washington. The United Nations Security Council had been called into emergency session. "Show me the latest images," Kate ordered. The main screen lit up with a telescopic view from the lunar observatory. What had first appeared as a single bright light was now clearly visible as 7 distinct shapes. 6 smaller vessels surrounded one massive ship at the center. They were sleek, their surfaces reflecting the distant sunlight with a blue-green shimmer. "Any attempts at communication?" Kate asked. "None that we've detected," Greg replied. "They're being quiet." Kate's phone buzzed. The president had landed. President Alan Garrett wasn't a tall man, but he filled the room with his presence as he entered the command center 2 hours later. Dark circles under his eyes revealed a sleepless night since being informed of the approaching vessels. "Admiral Monroe, what are we looking at?" he asked without preamble. Kate gestured to the large screen where the alien ships now appeared much clearer. 7 vessels of unknown origin, Mr. President. They've taken up positions in high Earth orbit. No hostile actions, but no communication, either. "Military assessment?" Kate chose her words carefully. "Their technology is far beyond ours. The energy readings alone suggest propulsion systems we can only dream about. If their weapons match their engines, we're outmatched." The president nodded grimly. "And our options?" "We wait, sir. We've broadcast welcome messages on all frequencies. Ball's in their court." The room fell silent as everyone stared at the screen. Then, without warning, every electronic device in the command center flickered. The lights dimmed momentarily before returning to full brightness. "What was that?" the president demanded. Before anyone could answer, the main screen changed. The image of the alien ships disappeared, replaced by a face. The being looking back at them had smooth gray-blue skin and large, slanted eyes that shimmered with an inner light. No nose was visible, just 2 small slits where a human nose would be. Its mouth was a thin line that barely moved as it began to speak. "People of Earth." The voice was surprisingly human, though with an odd metallic quality. "I am Grand Major Zorix of the Galactic Council Unified Forces. Your world has been monitored for some time. The Council has determined that your species has reached a developmental stage requiring intervention." Kate and the president exchanged alarmed glances. "What kind of intervention?" the president asked loudly. As if hearing him, Zorix continued, "Your civilization is young, primitive, and dangerous. Your development of nuclear weapons, your ongoing conflicts, and your environmental mismanagement indicate a species unable to responsibly manage its own affairs. The Council has designated Earth as a protectorate territory, effective immediately." A chill ran down Kate's spine. This wasn't a friendly visit. Under Council law, you will surrender your military assets, dismantle your nuclear arsenal, and accept Council governance. A transition authority will be established within 7 planetary rotations. This is not negotiable. The screen flickered again, showing a map of Earth with several points marked in red. "To demonstrate our technological superiority and the futility of resistance, we will now deliver a non-lethal demonstration." Without warning, every light in the building went out. Emergency generators failed to activate. Officers tried to use their phones, but nothing worked. Through the windows, Kate could see that the entire city had gone dark. Reports soon came in. Through the few working battery-powered radios, the power outage was worldwide. Every electrical grid on Earth had been shut down simultaneously. 30 minutes later, just as panic was beginning to spread, power returned as suddenly as it had. Gone. The alien's face reappeared on the screen. You have 48 of your hours to signal your acceptance of these terms. Failure to comply will result in more permanent demonstrations of our power. The screen went blank. In the Pentagon's crisis room, President Garrett sat at the head of the table surrounded by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Maps and satellite images covered the walls. The alien ships remained in orbit, silent since their ultimatum 6 hours ago. They want us to just roll over, Defense Secretary William Hayes said, his fist hitting the table. They don't understand humans very well. They understand force, General Richard Scott countered. That power outage was just a taste. Imagine what else they can do. Kate studied the satellite images. Mr. President, I believe we need to appear cooperative while preparing for all possibilities. You mean surrender? General Scott asked sharply. I mean survive, Kate replied. We buy time. These aliens, this council, they expect immediate compliance. Their message made that clear. They see us as primitive and irrational. So? The president asked. So let's be rational. We open a dialogue. Ask questions. Request clarification of terms. Meanwhile, we quietly activate our contingency plans. President Garrett nodded slowly. What kind of contingency plans? Kate's eyes were hard. Operation Scattered Seed, sir. We've had plans since the Cold War for preserving humanity in case of global catastrophe. Underground facilities, the lunar base, the Mars colony project. We accelerate everything. We get as many people off-grid and into hardened shelters as we can without being obvious. You think they'll attack regardless? Secretary Hayes asked. I think anyone who opens with threats instead of greetings didn't come to make friends, Kate said. They don't want allies. They want subjects. The president was silent for a long moment. Begin preparations. Quietly. I'll address the United Nations in 3 hours. We'll stall for time. As the meeting broke up, Kate remained behind. Mr. President, there's something else. Project Scorpion. The president's eyebrows rose. The stealth ships? I thought they were still theoretical. We have 3 prototypes, sir. Built with technology we reverse-engineered from the scout ship that crashed in Arizona in 2031. They're our ace in the hole. Will they be enough? Kate looked at the images of the alien ships. No, sir. But they're a start. As she left the Pentagon, Kate looked up at the sky. The aliens couldn't see it yet, but they had made a critical error. They had threatened humanity with extinction or servitude. They were about to learn that humans didn't surrender. They fought. The Galactic Council had demanded obedience. Humanity would give them war. Captain John Reeves gripped the arms of his command chair as the USS Defiant glided silently through space. The experimental stealth vessel was humanity's secret weapon, a ship built with technology that humans had no business possessing yet. Status? Report, John whispered, though there was no need to keep his voice down. The ship's stealth systems didn't work that way. Old habits from submarine duty died hard. Lieutenant Susan Morgan looked up from her console. Stealth systems holding. Sir, Council ships show no sign they've detected us. Through the main viewport, John could see Earth's makeshift defense fleet engaging the Council warships. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Human vessels exploded one after another as they were struck by weapons that seemed to ignore their shields completely. All part of the plan, John reminded himself. The public defense was a distraction, meant to convince the Council that humanity was throwing everything at them in a desperate, doomed effort. Meanwhile, the real fight was just beginning. The Defiant was the result of a classified project. 40 years ago, a small alien scout ship had crashed in the Arizona desert. The government had kept it secret, studied it, and slowly learned to replicate pieces of its technology. The Defiant and its 2 sister ships were the result, vessels with limited stealth capabilities that could, for short periods, become almost invisible to sensors. Targeting solutions for the Council command ship, John asked. Locked in, sir? Susan replied. We'll have one shot before their sensors detect our presence. John nodded. All hands, prepare for attack run. 200 miles below the Earth's surface, Dr. Elizabeth Ford worked in a laboratory that officially didn't exist. Around her, dozens of scientists studied pieces of Council technology captured during the early days of the invasion. Their neural networks operate on quantum principles, Elizabeth explained to Colonel Frank Martinez, who had just arrived from what remained of the Pentagon. They communicate instantly across vast distances using quantum entanglement. In English, Doctor, Frank said, rubbing his tired eyes. Elizabeth smiled patiently. Their ships talk to each other using special particles that are connected. No time delay, no way to block the signal. But we might be able to use that against them. The underground complex shook as another distant explosion reached them, sending dust falling from the ceiling. 3 weeks had passed since the Council's arrival. 3 weeks of humanity pretending to negotiate while secretly preparing for a long war. How long until you have something we can use? Frank asked. 2 weeks if we're lucky, Elizabeth replied, not looking up from her work. Less if we can access one of their communication nodes. Frank pulled up a map on the large screen at the front of the lab. We might be able to arrange that. Our forces captured a small Council outpost in northern Canada yesterday. Elizabeth's eyes lit up. I need to see their equipment. I'm going there. It's an active war zone, Doctor. Then I guess I'm going to war. On the lunar colony, Commander Patricia Daniels helped an elderly woman onto the transport. The lunar base, originally built to house 300 scientists and engineers, now held 3,000 refugees. More arrived with each shuttle from Earth. That's the last group from Shelter 4, said Nathan Phillips, Patricia's executive officer. Next transport leaves for Mars in 6 hours. The Council didn't know about the Mars colony. Or rather, they knew about the small research station that had been operating there for 5 years. They didn't know about the underground complex that had been secretly built to house up to 50,000 people. They didn't know about the asteroid mining operations in the belt or the small outpost on Titan. Humanity was dispersing, hiding seeds of itself throughout the solar system. Status report from Earth? Patricia asked as they walked back toward the command center. Nathan handed her a tablet. Council forces have occupied most major cities. Resistance is growing, though. The Chinese are giving them hell in the mountains. Same with forces in the Rockies and Andes. Patricia nodded. And Project Blackout? Proceeding as planned. The Council thinks they've captured most of our military leadership. The decoys are playing their parts well. The real Earth government now operated from a fleet of submarines beneath the Arctic ice. The military command was scattered across a dozen hidden bunkers. What the aliens saw was an elaborate show, high-ranking officials who surrendered, followed orders, and secretly fed false information to their new overlords. Any word from the Defiant? Patricia asked. Nathan shook his head. Radio silence as ordered, but we should know soon if their mission succeeded. President Alan Garrett, now operating from a mobile command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, reviewed the latest casualty reports. Millions dead, cities in ruins. But humanity was far from defeated. The Council expected us to surrender immediately, said Defense Secretary Hayes. They didn't plan for a long occupation. Their forces are stretched thin already. Because they don't understand us, the President replied. They think superior technology guarantees victory. They don't understand that humans have been fighting against superior forces throughout our history. A communications officer approached with an urgent message. Mr. President, we've just received word from Captain Reeves. The Defiant's mission was successful. They destroyed a major Council communications hub and escaped undetected. For the first time in weeks, the President smiled. And Dr. Ford? Her team is making progress, sir. They believe they can disrupt Council communications within days, not weeks. The President turned to Admiral Monroe, who had just entered the room. Kate, I think it's time for Phase 2. She nodded grimly. Yes, sir. I'll give the order. All across Earth, hidden resistance cells activated. People who had seemingly accepted Council rule suddenly turned against their oppressors. Captured Council technology was turned against its makers. Supply lines were ambushed. Collaborators disappeared. The Council had expected a short, decisive conquest. Instead, they found themselves drawn into a war of attrition against an enemy that refused to fight according to established galactic norms. In his flagship orbiting Earth, Grand Major Zorix watched with growing concern as reports of attacks flowed in from across the planet. "These humans are irrational," he told his war council. "They continue to fight despite overwhelming evidence of our superiority." Science Major Kallax studied the data on his screen. "It is more than that, Grand Major. They adapt to our tactics with remarkable speed. Our patrols are ambushed with increasing precision. Someone is coordinating these attacks." "Find them," Zorix ordered. "Find their leaders and eliminate them." But the humans were proving difficult to eliminate. For every one killed, 10 more seemed to rise in their place, and now Council ships were starting to experience strange malfunctions, weapons that misfired, navigation systems that failed at critical moments. The easy victory Zorix had promised the Council was slipping away. What should have been a simple pacification operation was becoming something the Council had not faced in 10,000 years. A true war. 6 months into the war, Earth was a different place. Cities lay in ruins, forests burned, and the skies were often filled with the sleek shapes of Council ships. But the aliens who had expected a quick victory now found themselves in a frustrating stalemate. Grand Major Zorix stared at the holographic map of Earth, red dots showing areas of human resistance. There were too many dots. "How is it possible?" he demanded of his war council. "How can these primitives continue to resist us?" Science Major Kallax looked nervous. "The humans are more resourceful than our studies indicated, Grand Major. They adapt quickly. They learn from each defeat." "And our communications problems?" Zorix's voice was dangerously quiet. "Growing worse," admitted Technology Major Vril. "More ships report system failures each day. Weapons malfunction. Navigation computers send vessels to wrong locations. It is as if the humans have found a way to—" He hesitated. "To what?" Zorix snapped. "To hack our quantum networks, which should be impossible." Zorix slammed his fist on the table. "Nothing is impossible. Find the source of these disruptions and destroy it." In her underground lab beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Dr. Elizabeth Ford worked tirelessly. The Council communication node captured in Canada had been the key. With it, her team had cracked the secrets of quantum entanglement technology. "It's working better than we hoped," she told Colonel Frank Martinez, now General Martinez after the death of so many senior officers. "Every time they try to fix the disruptions, we find new ways to exploit their systems." On screens around the lab, Council communications appeared as streams of data. Elizabeth's team had learned to intercept them, alter them, and even create false communications. Council ships received wrong orders. Supply vessels arrived at empty coordinates. Targeting computers suddenly identified friendly vessels as enemies. "The Council is getting desperate," Frank said, studying reports from resistance cells across North America. "They're using heavier weapons now, destroying entire areas just to eliminate a few fighters." Elizabeth nodded grimly. "Which means we're hurting them. But this is just the beginning." She led Frank to a sealed room where a captured Council weapon sat on a testing platform. "We've reversed engineered their energy weapons. Production starts next week." Frank smiled for the first time in months. "We're not winning yet. But we're no longer losing," Elizabeth finished. Admiral Kate Monroe stood on the bridge of the submarine USS Barracuda, one of the last intact vessels of the old U.S. Navy. The submarine now served as a mobile command center, moving constantly beneath the Arctic ice to avoid detection. "Satellite imagery confirms it," reported her communications officer. "Council, ships are pulling back from outlying areas to defend their main bases." Kate studied the tactical display. The Council had arrived with 200 ships. Intelligence estimated they had lost at least 30. Not a devastating number, but enough to force them to concentrate their forces. "Any word from the Luna base?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral. Commander Daniels reports the Mars fleet will be ready for its first operation within 2 weeks. The Mars fleet. The name still brought a smile to Kate's face. When the council arrived, Mars had hosted only a small research station. Officially, in reality, a secret military base had been operating there for years, building ships with technology reversed engineered from the Arizona crash. The council knew nothing about it. They had no idea that humans now had a small but growing fleet of vessels incorporating alien technology, not as advanced as council ships, but close enough to be dangerous. And Captain Reeves? The Defiant and her sister ships continue guerrilla operations in Earth orbit. They've destroyed 7 council supply ships in the past month. Kate nodded, satisfied. Send word to all commands. Operation Thunderstrike begins in 15 days. President Alan Garrett looked much older than he had 6 months ago. His hair had turned completely gray and deep lines creased his face. But his eyes burned with determination as he addressed the surviving Joint Chiefs in their bunker beneath Mount Weather. Gentlemen, ladies, we've taken the best punch our enemy can throw and we're still standing, he said. Now it's our turn. General. Laura Beck, the newest member of the Joint Chiefs, pointed to a world map. Resistance forces now control approximately 30% of Earth's land area, mostly in mountainous regions and dense forests, where council ships have trouble operating. And civilian morale? The president asked. Surprisingly strong, sir, answered Secretary Hayes. Council attempts to turn humans against each other have largely failed. Their propaganda portrays resistance fighters as terrorists preventing peace, but few are buying it. The president nodded. And our special projects? Hayes smiled slightly. Dr. Ford's communication disruption systems have exceeded expectations. The shipyards on Mars are producing vessels faster than projected, and Project Lazarus is ready for deployment. Project Lazarus, the most desperate and dangerous of humanity's plans. Nuclear weapons placed at strategic locations around the world, not to be used against council forces but as a final option to destroy Earth itself if humanity faced extinction. Let's hope we never need to use that one, the president said quietly. What about our allies among the stars? This was the most surprising development of the war. 3 weeks ago, a non-council alien vessel had made contact with the Mars base. The Nezdari, a species that had broken away from council rule centuries ago, offered an alliance against their common enemy. The Nezdari have provided technical specifications for council shield systems, Hayes reported. Dr. Ford's team is already working on ways to penetrate them. The president stood walking to the small window that looked out on the underground hydroponic gardens that helped feed the bunker's inhabitants. We've survived the first phase of this war, he said. But survival isn't enough. It's time to take the fight to the enemy. It's time to show the council that humanity doesn't just resist. We fight back. In orbit above Mars, Commander Patricia Daniels, now Admiral of the Mars fleet, walked the decks of the HMS Vengeance. The ship was humanity's first true warship built for space combat, incorporating both human ingenuity and stolen council technology. All systems are operational, reported Nathan Phillips, now her second in command. The fleet is ready. Patricia nodded, looking out at the 20 ships floating in formation around them, a small force compared to the council's armada, but these ships had advantages the council wouldn't expect. Send word to Earth Command, she ordered. The Mars fleet stands ready. We await the order to launch Operation Thunderstrike. Nathan hesitated. Do you think we're ready, Admiral? These ships have never been tested in actual combat. Patricia's face was grim but determined. No one is ever ready for war, Nathan. But we don't have a choice. The council came to our home and demanded we bow to them. Her hand tightened on the railing. It's time they learned that humanity bows to no one. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for its first coordinated offensive. On Earth, resistance fighters readied weapons and explosives. In orbit, stealth ships moved into position, and from Mars, a fleet of warships prepared to launch. The council had come expecting submission. Instead, they had ignited a war that would change the galaxy forever. All ships execute hyperspace jump on my mark, Admiral Patricia Daniels commanded from the bridge of the HMS Vengeance. Around her, crew members monitored systems that humans had barely understood a year ago. 3, 2, 1, mark. Space rippled around the 20 ships of the Mars fleet. Then, in a flash of blue light, they vanished. Operation Thunderstrike had begun. Moments later, the fleet reappeared near Jupiter, directly behind a Council supply convoy. The Council ships, caught completely by surprise, had no time to raise shields before the first human missiles struck. Direct hits on all targets, reported Nathan Phillips, watching the tactical display. 3 enemy vessels destroyed, 2 disabled. Patricia nodded. Begin boarding operations on the disabled ships. I want their cargo and any intelligence we can gather. Then set course for Lunar Point Alpha. The Mars fleet wasn't large enough to directly challenge the Council's main forces. Instead, it would strike quickly at vulnerable targets and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Hit and run, the oldest tactic in guerrilla warfare, now applied to space combat. On Earth, the coordinated attack began at exactly the same time. In every occupied city, resistance fighters struck at Council installations, bombs exploded at alien command posts, human soldiers with stolen Council weapons ambushed patrols. Colonel Maria Stevens led her team through the sewers beneath what had once been Chicago. Above them, explosions shook the ground as diversionary attacks drew Council forces away from their real target. Status report, Maria whispered into her radio. Alpha team in position, came the reply. Beta and Charlie ready. Council forces responding to the Market Square bombing. Maria nodded to her squad. Move out. They climbed up through a maintenance shaft and emerged inside the basement of a skyscraper, now serving as the Council's Midwest headquarters. 2 guards died silently, taken down by humans with vibroblades stolen from Council armories. The team moved quickly through the building, planting small devices at key structural points, not bombs, something far more dangerous. Devices planted, Maria reported once they were safely away. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The devices activated simultaneously, releasing a cloud of microscopic nanites into the building's air system. Dr. Ford's latest creation, these tiny machines were programmed to infiltrate Council technology and corrupt it from within. Within hours, every piece of alien equipment in the building would fail. Similar attacks occurred at Council bases worldwide. By the end of the day, the aliens would find their Earth operations in chaos. In orbit, Captain John Reeves watched as the Council fleet scrambled to respond to multiple crises. The Defiant and its sister ships had just destroyed a major communications relay, adding to the aliens' confusion. Council command ships are breaking orbit, reported Susan Morgan now, his executive officer. They're moving to defensive positions. John smiled grimly. Just as we hoped. Signal the lunar forces. Their window is open. From the far side of the moon, hidden from Council sensors, 300 small fighter craft launched. These were Earth's last remaining atmospheric fighters, hidden on the lunar base since the invasion began. Now they streaked toward Earth, targeting Council dropships and supply vessels caught in the open. Multiple targets destroyed, Susan reported, watching the data stream in. Council air support for their ground forces is crippled across Asia and Europe. John nodded. Time to move to Phase 2. He opened a channel to all human forces. This is Captain Reeves. Operation Thunderstrike Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. In his command ship, Grand Major Zorix watched in growing horror as reports of attacks flooded in from across the system. What had seemed like a contained insurgency had suddenly exploded into a coordinated military campaign. How is this possible? He demanded. These humans had no space fleet. They must have hidden resources we failed to detect, admitted War Major Draxus. The attack patterns suggest months of planning. A lieutenant rushed into the command center. Grand Major, we've lost contact with supply base Axion near the gas giant. The human fleet was spotted there moments before communications failed. Zorix slammed his fist on the console. Deploy the battle cruisers. I want that human fleet destroyed. Sir, the lieutenant hesitated. The battle cruisers are responding to the attacks in Earth orbit. If we redirect them, Do it now, Zorix roared. The supply lines must be protected. As the Council forces split to address multiple threats, they fell into the trap humanity had set for them. Their strength had always been in overwhelming force, concentrated at key points. Now they were spread thin, reacting rather than controlling. Dr. Elizabeth Ford monitored the battle from her lab, where screens showed the positions of both human and Council forces. Beside her, General Frank Martinez watched with satisfaction. The quantum disruptors are working perfectly, Elizabeth said. Council ships can't coordinate their responses. Some are receiving false orders, others no orders at all. Frank nodded. And Project Spectre? Elizabeth's eyes gleamed. Ready for deployment. Council scanners will never see it coming. Project Spectre was the culmination of Elizabeth's research, a virus designed to infect Council neural networks and turn their own ships against them. All they needed was access to the Council's main command network. Admiral Monroe's team is in position, Frank said. They're ready when you are. Elizabeth took a deep breath. Send the go code. Admiral Kate Monroe and a small team of Special Forces operators moved silently through the ventilation system of the Council's primary Earth command ship. The vessel had been infiltrated during the confusion of the attack, a nearly impossible mission that was only feasible due to Council communication disruptions. Kate checked the small device in her hand. We're close. The main server node should be just ahead. The team reached a heavily shielded room filled with pulsing crystalline structures, the physical components of the Council's quantum communication system. While guards patrolled outside, the ventilation shafts had been left unprotected. The aliens never imagined humans could reach this deep into their most secure vessel. Plant the devices as Dr. Ford instructed, Kate ordered. We have 5 minutes before the patrol returns. The team worked quickly, attaching small modules to specific crystal formations. These modules would inject Elizabeth's virus directly into the Council's command network, spreading to every ship in their fleet. Devices planted, reported Lieutenant Joe Bradley, the team's tech specialist. Activation in 30 seconds. Kate nodded. Fall back to the extraction point. As they retreated through the ventilation system, Kate allowed herself a small smile. The Council had come to Earth expecting to find primitive savages who would bow before superior technology. Instead, they found warriors who had taken that technology and turned it against them. The Council had demanded obedience. Humanity had spent the last year preparing to show them exactly how wrong they were. Now, as Operation Thunderstrike unfolded across the solar system, the aliens were learning a harsh lesson. Never underestimate humans when they fight for their home. 5 years after the Council ships first appeared in Earth's sky, Admiral Kate Monroe stood in the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council. The massive room stretched for hundreds of feet in every direction, with thousands of alien representatives seated in rising tiers. At the center was a circular platform where Kate now stood with the human delegation. She wore a formal military uniform, adorned with medals that represented battles fought across the solar system. Beside her stood Captain John Reeves, Dr. Elizabeth Ford, and General Laura Beck, heroes of a war that had changed humanity's destiny and shaken the foundation of galactic politics. The Treaty of Sol recognizes humanity's sovereignty and Earth's special status within Council space, announced Mediator Trill, a tall, willowy alien with pale blue skin. His voice echoed through the chamber. Furthermore, it acknowledges humanity's right to limited expansion within the sector previously designated as Protectorate Zone 419. Kate maintained a composed expression, but inside she felt a surge of pride. Humanity had not just survived, they had earned their place among the stars. The war had been long and brutal. Operation Thunderstrike had been just the beginning. For 2 years, humans had fought the Council forces to a stalemate across the solar system. Dr. Ford's virus had crippled much of the Council fleet, but the aliens had eventually developed countermeasures. What the Council hadn't counted on was humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender, even in the face of overwhelming odds. When one tactic failed, humans developed new ones. When Council forces destroyed a resistance cell, 2 more appeared in its place. And then there were the defectors. Not all Council species supported the war against Earth. The Nezdari had been the first to break away and ally with humans, but others followed. They brought technology, intelligence, and eventually political pressure within the Council itself. After 3 years of fighting, the Council had finally opened peace negotiations. Now, 2 years later, the final treaty was being signed. Kate stepped forward and pressed her palm against the glowing treaty tablet. The document was now binding under Council law. Humanity was officially recognized as a sovereign species with the right to govern itself. Earth welcomes peaceful relations with the Galactic Council, Kate said, reciting the formal words that had been carefully negotiated. We look forward to a future of cooperation and mutual respect. What she didn't say was what every human knew. They would never again allow themselves to be vulnerable to alien domination. Even as the peace talks had progressed, Earth had continued, building its defenses and expanding its fleet. They still don't quite understand us, John Reeves remarked quietly as the human delegation left the council chamber. Perhaps they never will, Elizabeth Ford replied. But they respect us now. The two walked along a massive window that looked out over Axelon Prime, the council's capital world. Alien ships of countless designs moved through the sky like fish in a cosmic sea. What will you do now? John asked. Back to the lab? Elizabeth smiled. The new research center on Europa is waiting for me. The council may have advanced technology, but we've proven we can match and sometimes exceed it. I intend to keep that momentum going. John nodded. And I've got a new ship waiting, the Vigilant, first of the new defensive fleet. They both understood what wasn't being said. Peace had been achieved, but humanity would remain vigilant. The lesson of the Council invasion would never be forgotten. On Earth, President Alan Garrett addressed the United Nations, now expanded to include representatives from the human colonies throughout the solar system. After 8 years in office, during the most challenging period in human history, his hair had turned completely white, but his voice remained strong. We paid a terrible price for our freedom, he said solemnly. Millions lost their lives. Cities were destroyed. Wounds were inflicted that will take generations to heal. The assembly hall was silent. Everyone had lost someone in the war. But we have secured our place among the stars not as subjects, but as architects of our own destiny. The Treaty of Sol guarantees our independence and our right to expand to nearby star systems. The technology we have gained will help us rebuild stronger than before. He paused, looking at the assembled representatives of humanity. Let us never forget what we learned from this conflict. United, humanity is capable of overcoming any challenge. Divided, we are vulnerable. As we move forward into this new era, let us maintain the unity that saved us from extinction. In orbit around Earth, a combined Human Council peacekeeping fleet maintained watch. Among the sleek alien vessels, human ships now stood as equals. Some were based on Council designs, others were uniquely human in their approach to space travel and combat. Admiral Patricia Daniels, commander of Earth's Orbital Defense Force, watched from the bridge of the HMS Salvation as a Council diplomatic vessel departed for Axelon Prime. The ship carried the human ambassadors who would establish Earth's first permanent presence on the Council. Strange to think we're sending diplomats instead of soldiers, commented Nathan Phillips, still her faithful second-in-command after all these years. War is when diplomacy fails, Patricia replied. We'll always maintain our strength, but peace is preferable. Do you trust them? Nathan asked quietly. Patricia considered the question. Trust is earned. The Council has taken the first steps toward earning ours, but we'll be watching. As night fell over a scarred but healing Earth, children in a rebuilt school in what had once been Boston learned about the stars. Their teacher, a young woman who had fought in the resistance as a teenager, pointed to a holographic map of nearby star systems. These are the worlds humanity will explore in the coming decades, she explained. The Treaty of Sol gives us the right to establish colonies on uninhabited planets within 20 light years of our sun. A young boy raised his hand. Teacher, why did the Council attack us in the first place? The teacher considered her answer carefully. They believed we were too dangerous to be left alone. They didn't understand that trying to control humans only makes us fight harder. Will they try again? Asked a worried girl. The teacher shook her head. No, they've learned that humans don't surrender their freedom, no matter the odds. That knowledge is our greatest protection. As the children continued their lesson outside the window, construction crews worked to rebuild the city skyline. In orbit, shipyards assembled vessels that would soon carry humans to distant stars. In laboratories across the planet, scientists studied technology that would have seemed magical just a few years earlier. The Council had demanded obedience. Humanity had given them war, and in doing so, they had earned peace. Not as subjects, but as equals. The universe was vast and filled with wonders and dangers, but humanity had proven it would never kneel again.